Hey everybody, I'd like to wish you all a wonderful Memorial Day today once again. And uh, I hope you won't mind if I'd like to dedicate this one to a couple friends of mine, Bobby Beasley and Craig Cherry. Um, they were not just friends, we were part of the same unit, and we were all mobilized and deployed together to Afghanistan. And unfortunately, both were killed in action and did not return with us from there. They're good men. Craig Cherry was a sergeant, and if you're in a fight, he's the kind of NCO that you want on your side. I've seen him many times as we were lining up for patrol. He'd be inspecting each one of the people that were with him, and he'd want to see their ammunition and check on how much water they had with them. He was the kind of NCO that wanted to make sure that his people had everything that they were going to need, plus even more than that before they ever left our fob and went out on patrol. He was that kind of man. And I remember in the case of Bobby Beasley, before we were even mobilized, um, we one weekend were out in the field, but just before we left to go out there, we had a new soldier who joined our unit, and he hadn't even been issued any field equipment or gear. And so at the last minute before we headed out, we were trying to put together uh, whatever we could scrounge so he could be with us out there in the field. It was going to be a cold weekend when he didn't even have a sleeping bag. That was one of the things that we needed. And Bobby Beasley was the one who came up and said he found a sleeping bag, and that's what he used for this weekend. I found out later, I didn't know it at the time, but I found out that Beasley had actually given up his own sleeping bag so that the new guy could have something to get started with on that first weekend. Uh, the Army is an unusual organization. Now everybody is different. They have bad apples, I know that, but it's a place where you have a chance to work with people of that caliber, and I consider it an honor to have been able to deploy with them and be a part of their unit. And I hope you enjoy your Memorial Day. And while you do, you might just take a minute to thank God for their sacrifice and for people like them. I know for all of us, we have an expiration date, and we don't know when that is. I enjoy old age. You don't hear that very much from people. There are a lot of reasons that I won't go into today, but one of them is that I'm going to see the Lord before too long, and I appreciate the fact that God has given me this season of life to look forward to that day and prepare for it and do what I can. But as I think about that, my desire is to finish well in this life, and I'd like to pass that on to you. I hope that's your desire as well. I've known too many men in ministry who started well, but didn't finish well in their ministry. But there is a person whose example I think that we can take to heart today, and it's the Apostle Paul. And as he looked at to the end of his life, in Second Timothy was the last letter he wrote, and he realized that he was going to be executed before too long. That as he sat there in his cell and he wrote that at some point he didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but Roman soldiers would show up at his cell and take him out, and he would be beheaded for the cause of Christ. And they did that because he was a Roman citizen. They decided that would be um, an easier death, I guess, than some other ways they could execute a person. But that's what was waiting for him as he wrote and as he looked forward to his own end date. And I like what the Apostle Paul wrote because he writes as an old soldier who's looking forward to his next assignment. In 2 Timothy 4, 6 and 7, he said, I am now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. I've fought the good fight. I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. He is ready to be offered as a sacrifice. That's what that word means. And his departure, though, is not the end. It's a word that he uses there that means you take down your tent and you move on to someplace else. And of course, for him, it'd be a much better place there in heaven. One of the things that he said as he looks back on his life is, I have fought the good fight. The Greek word that he used for fight is agona. It's a word that we get the word agony from. It means a struggle that he's been through. And the way he used that word was, in a sense, that he's not necessarily talking about how well he fought. He's talking about which fight he was in. He had choices like anyone else does. He could have been fighting for righteousness as a Pharisee, like he did at one time in his life. He could have been fighting for a group of disciples as a popular rabbi. He had the credentials to do that. There are a lot of fights he could have been in, but he was in a fight for the sake of Jesus Christ. That's the good fight. And that's what I'd like to leave with you today. Think about which fight you're in. You know, as I look at the world around us, there is so much turmoil that we're in. There are many fights going on. There are 9 wars going on in different parts of the world right now. And as I look at our own country, we are so divided more than ever before. There are political fights that people can be a part of. Some are fighting for success in their career or their financial situation. Some might be fighting for family issues. But you know, there's nothing more important than the fight that God has given you. In Revelation chapter 12, we read that there was war in heaven. And it's a war not between God and Satan. God doesn't fight with anybody. He simply does. He's God. But it's interesting that the angels were fighting, that the holy angels were the rebellious angels, and Satan was cast out to this earth, and that's where he is right now. He's on earth. Satan is not in hell. That's an invention of Milton, maybe, and some other people, but no, he's on this earth, and he's fighting with you, and that's why we're told in Ephesians chapter 6 that we're fighting not with flesh and blood, but with demonic forces who are here on this earth. And if you're a Christian, you're a part of the fight right now, whether you realize it or not. That's the good fight. And that's what Paul wanted to leave with Timothy as he faced his end. That in his life, he'd been involved in a good fight for the sake of Jesus and for the sake of the souls of men on this earth. And keep that in mind on this Memorial Day as you think about those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for you. Maybe think about your own expiration date whenever it comes up. Because there are only 2 things in this life that last for eternity: God's Word and people. I'd encourage you to fight for them as you think about those things today. Enjoy your Memorial Day, and hope to see you again very soon.